Hook, you ever meet someone so convinced they run the world that you almost feel bad proving them wrong? Yeah, that was Karen. The woman who tried to have me evicted from my own home. The same home I paid cash for. Because she thought her title as HOA President made her queen of the neighborhood. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the very roof she slept under, I owned it. And this is the story of how she tried to destroy me, before realizing I was the one signing her lease. When I bought the house on Maple Ridge Lane, I wasn't looking for drama. I just wanted peace. A fresh start after my divorce, somewhere quiet where I could breathe again. It was a cozy craftsman-style home, a little worn around the edges, but it had character. The kind of place you fix up with your own hands and slowly fall in love with. The day I moved in, the neighborhood looked like something out of a postcard. Neatly trimmed lawns, white fences, and rows of mailboxes polished to a shine. Birds were chirping. Kids riding bikes. It was perfect. Almost too perfect. Then I met her. Karen. She appeared before I could even close my moving truck, clipboard in hand. A forced smile stretched across her face. "Welcome to Maple Ridge!" "I'm Karen, the HOA president," she said, extending her hand like a queen offering mercy. I shook it politely, already sensing trouble. She glanced at my boxes, then at my truck. "Just a reminder," she added sweetly, "moving trucks can only be parked in the driveway for 4 hours per HOA policy." It was 9 a.m. I blinked. "You're kidding, right?" She smiled wider.
"Oh no.
We take pride in keeping this community orderly." That was my first taste of Karen's version of order. Over the next few weeks, I learned what everyone else in the neighborhood already knew. Karen ruled Maple Ridge like a dictator in designer sandals. She issued fines for grass growing unevenly. She sent warnings about trash cans being visible 2 minutes before pickup. She even reprimanded a neighbor for having wind chimes that were too cheerful. It was ridiculous, but I tried to stay civil. I kept my lawn tidy, painted the shutters, followed the rules. Mostly. I wasn't looking for a fight. Until she started one. It began with a letter taped to my front door. Notice of violation, unauthorized renovations. I had repainted my porch railing. The same color it was before, just fresher. But apparently, I hadn't filed the proper color approval form. I sighed, rolled my eyes, and figured it was just another one of her petty power plays. I sent an email explaining the situation. No response. 2 days later, another notice. Then another. By the end of the month, Karen had issued 5 violations against me. And each one came with a fine, $50, then $75, then $100. I was being harassed in my own home. Finally, I decided to confront her. I found her watering her flowers, wearing a floppy hat like she was starring in her own gardening commercial. "Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "we need to talk about these violations." She turned, all fake politeness. "Oh, hello, dear. Yes, I did notice your recent infractions. You really should familiarize yourself with our guidelines." "Why have? And I haven't broken any." She tilted her head. "That's not for you to decide. The HOA board." "You are the board, Karen," I cut in. She smiled, not denying it. "Well, I simply enforce the rules. If you can't comply, we may have to consider further action. Possibly eviction." "Eviction?" I almost laughed. "Evict me? From a home I own?" Her smile didn't falter. "Ownership doesn't exempt you from community regulations, sweetheart." That word, sweetheart, burned like acid. Something inside me snapped. I didn't say another word. I just walked away, shaking my head. But deep down, a plan was forming. Because while Karen loved her rules, she didn't know the one rule that would undo her entirely. You see, a few months before I moved in, I'd bought a small set of investment properties through a real estate group. It wasn't until I checked the ownership records later that night that I realized one of them was hers. Karen's house, the one she proudly called the best in Maple Ridge. She rented it from me. I sat there staring at the document, the irony hitting me like a wave. The woman who'd been trying to evict me was living in my property. And suddenly, I knew exactly how this story was going to end. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was angry, though I was, but because I was amazed. Life has a funny way of setting traps for people who build their kingdoms on arrogance. And Karen had been digging hers for years. By sunrise, I had a plan. Not revenge, exactly. Just a little dose of perspective. The next week, Karen struck again. This time with an official-looking envelope from the HOA. Final warning, continued non-compliance may result in legal action. She even underlined, legal action, twice in red pen as if that made it more threatening. I almost smiled as I read it. The woman didn't realize she was threatening someone who literally held the key to her front door. Still, I played along. I paid the fine Zisa for now, nodded politely when she lectured me during board meetings, and let her think she was winning. Because sometimes, the best revenge is letting someone dig their own hole. Then came the breaking point. It was a Saturday morning when Karen showed up on my porch again, flanked by 2 HOA board members, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. She had her clipboard, her little smirk, and a printed eviction recommendation notice. Due to repeated violations, she announced like a judge in a courtroom, we're initiating proceedings to have you removed from the community. You have 7 days to vacate. I raised an eyebrow. You're serious? A's a heart attack. She smirked, crossing her arms. This neighborhood has standards. If you can't follow them, you don't belong here. That word, belong. It hit harder than I expected. Because deep down, that was what Karen was really about, power through exclusion. Making others feel small so she could feel tall. I didn't argue. I just said, all right, Karen, if that's how you want to play it. And I walked back inside, leaving her on my porch satisfied and smug. But I had one last move to make. 3 days later, I called my property manager, the one who handled my rental properties. Hey, I said calmly, tenant in 14th Maple Ridge is overdue on inspection. Go ahead and deliver the ownership notice in person. He paused. You sure? Positive, I said, and make sure she signs the acknowledgement. That afternoon, as I was sipping coffee on my porch, I heard it. A faint scream echoing across the cul-de-sac. Then came the slam of a door, the sound of hurried footsteps, and finally, the sight of Karen storming up my driveway, her face red with disbelief. Yo! She yelled, waving a paper in her hand. This mistake! It says you own my house! I stood slowly, calm as a summer breeze. That's no mistake. Her mouth dropped. You're lying. There's no way. It's all public record. I interrupted. Bought it 6 months ago through my LLC. You've been renting from me ever since. For the first time since I met her, Karen was speechless. The clipboard trembled in her hand. Her perfect composure cracked. You can't do this! You can't just. Karen, I said gently. You tried to evict me from my own home. You fined me for painting a porch. You called me sweetheart while threatening me. And now, I think it's time you faced the same rules you love enforcing. Her face went pale. You wouldn't. I tilted my head. You have 3 overdue HOA violations on your rental property, unapproved lawn ornaments, peeling shutters, and that broken side fence. Normally, I'd overlook it. But since you're such a fan of strict compliance, I paused. Consider this your final notice. She just stood there, stunned. The clipboard fell from her hand, papers scattering across the driveway like confetti. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to gloat. The silence between us said everything. Then she whispered, almost to herself, I was just trying to keep order. I sighed. Order isn't control, Karen. It's respect. And respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn. For the first time, her eyes softened, not much, but enough that I saw it. The faintest crack in her armor. Maybe it was embarrassment. Maybe realization. But it was something real. She turned and walked away, slower this time, No smirk. No clipboard, just quiet. A month later, Karen resigned from the HOA. The community breathed a collective sigh of relief. The new president was fair, kind, and actually listened to people. Karen still lived in the neighborhood. At least for a while. Eventually, she moved out. Left a polite note with her keys and a small potted plant on the porch. For the new beginning, it said. And you know what? I smiled. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about balance. About standing your ground without losing your humanity. Sometimes the universe doesn't need your rage. Just your patience. And sometimes, the people who try to tear you down end up teaching you just how strong you really are. Moral: never let someone convince you that power is the same as respect. True strength is quiet, steady, and fair. And sometimes, it smiles from the porch while karma does the talking.